Blue skies smiling at me.
Captain's log. Stardate 2402.9.17. September 17th, 2402. 78917.4. The Chimera A is en route to the Freaky Loud system in the Alpha B Doradus binary system. 3 years ago, Lucky Clerk came here on his mission to the Lucky Clerk show, which has been altered by the return of the Everson and Matthews time travelers to their timeline. We are ordered to investigate. I haven't seen anyone ask yet, what is Freaky Loud?
When I first saw it on screen, it snickered and said, a pop-up ad.
I misread it as Firecloud. I had been thinking that Maddox was on Mars, but no, it's this Iconian planet. Makes more sense. The Libertarian Center of the Federation? I'm in. Snakeweed for everyone. I'll take some of that snakeweed.
It's what they repurposed Nimbus 3 for after the whole Planet of Galactic Beast thing failed over a century ago. I heard Orions tried to take over there, and it didn't work. They got bored and left.
It's similar, but not the same. Nimbus is in the Hobus sector, and was obliterated when Romulus Prime went Nova in 2387. Freaky Loud, being in the Alpha B Dorada system, well, just behind it. Giant stars in that system seem to have protected it from the subspace shockwave.
Perhaps.
We believe it possible the aliens called Everson and Matthews were seen there, so we're going there to investigate. They will have poor impulse control. It's been just a few weeks since they went back in time, but they had 4 years to catch up.
That makes a lot of sense. I could see them being on station.
My thought is that Bruce Maddox, being what he is, wanted to continue working on synthetic life, which is now banned in the Federation.
So when Raffi says he's on Freaky Loud, everyone seems to have an "ah, that makes sense" expression. So it must be a place that is free from either Federation law or others.
Imagining a real-world pirate bay in space. Just so it doesn't use Bitcoin.
The cloud part means it's some kind of floating space station, like the one we saw in the distance when Agnes was outside listening to music at the Daystrom Institute.
I like where you're going with this, but our mission is paramount. No one knows any more than you do. They just introduced the idea. They will explore it in the coming episodes.
The show is serialized. Not everything is resolved by the end of the episode. They never did return there. This will be the first time officially, as we're ordered there.
I've seen no discussion. No speculation about it. Figured I'd get it going. Sounds like a space station or habitat, with Ferengi by the sound of it. Space station, probably. The Ferengi don't do free, though.
Yeah, it's what Deep Space Nine goes by now, and it's actually Freak Cloud, the most popular holo ordered at the holosuites.
It's nothing overtly sexual, but it just puts you in a stand-up special produced by Quark, where Morn does what Morn does best. Talk.
It's where those space hippies from TOS ended up. An anarchic space station or planet. No laws at all, but somehow it works, as any bad guys just get lawlessly dealt with.
Tandy and I will go on our mission while you go down there. Have a look. Surely the signals from them are already affecting us, so we must hurry.
The whole show is an attempt to say humanity will reach maturity and wisdom on the day it begins to not just to tolerate, but to take a special delight in differences in ideas and differences in life forms.
Well, you consider all the cultural taboos that Starship has broken over the decades.
Tabby and Tandy may leave for their part of the mission. Find the Emmett tail and bring it here. Then we will know for sure.
Yes, sir.
I've been a Starship fan for over 30 years, and I can just say, I love Starship Lucky Clerks.
It isn't perfect, but boy is it better than I expected. I knew there's a contingent of naysayers here. That's fine. People are entitled to their opinion.
The moral quandary at the center of the show is also interesting, and I've taken the time to show both sides.
I really appreciate that nuance.
Also the fact that the Romulans are diverse and we're being shown not just a planet of funny hats. I love it. I'm rooting for you. Met a certain Starfleet captain yesterday.
To me, the Ferengi are the Jar Jar Binkses of Starship.
Wow.
I didn't think I'd ever shed a tear for a Starship episode until now. I just wanted to express my gratitude to Wesley for the Ready Room.
I cannot begin to tell you how much I'm enjoying Lucky Clerks. It is one of the few things I look forward to in my life.
I got to delve into fond reminisce.
I get to watch a beloved character in a new adventure, in a well-written storyline that has the potential to span several years. I love this story arc.
And every week, after watching Lucky Clerks, I watch the Ready Room. I love Wes's enthusiasm. I really enjoy his insight. I really appreciate his part and experience.
Wesley, I know that you've had your struggles with depression. I just want you to know that you're appreciated. I'm grateful for your part in this thing.
Live long and prosper, Wes. You've enriched my life, and I'm grateful for it.
We've had lots of episodes in Trek where someone goes off violating orders and saving the day, but in most of the other cases, they knew what they were doing the whole time.
Starship news and discussions. No slash fic. Well, a little slash fic.
It isn't perfect, but boy, is it better than I expected.
I know about the naysayers here, but everyone's entitled to their opinion.
I am Guinan. You met a version of me months ago. The power vacuum here, with what happened in 2399 on Freaky Loud, has called you there. Go there, and you will see me in person. She's a hologram of some kind. We must be close. Yellow alert, to your stations. Once we come out of warp, we want to know what we're dealing with. I don't expect a welcome committee. Sammclerk is back. Shadow has quarters. So are you acting as arbitrator on this?
The planet doesn't have a ruling council, so no. Nor will they have any jurisdiction.
What exactly is your rank and position, sir?
Same as you, really. Engineering, mostly sciences, and computers. Retired since 2385.
He was forced into it if the Mars fleet got fracked.
Yep.
They're using Orion-style techniques to mine subspace and normal space, littering them with spam, Captain. Mind control is not supposed to be possible. It's not a virus. It does seem to be affecting the crew, though, making us relive episodes of a show called Lucky Clerks. We can't help it. And we need to get out of here. Doesn't seem to have anything to do with Rich Everson or Mike Matthews. We should be going. The signals are upon us over subspace. It'll only get worse. Not even sure what it is.
Make it so.
This might sound like an odd thing to appreciate, but I'm really liking how the character is being an old man, and how the people around him seem to be extra protective of his frailty. I was not there during these events, but the season-long binge watch coming here didn't last long, and I'm caught up. Like when the Romulan shoved a sword into his hand. There was no pretense or sudden surprise stamina from Lucky Clerks.
Everyone, including Lucky Clerks, knew that he was too old for such things, and it was a cruel death sentence. They are treating him like borderline dementia Lucky Clerks from the season finale.
I think it's kind of the point. People around him are bound to be uncertain or have doubts about his sanity, because, he's an old dude who has a degenerative mental disease.
I get that it's sad, but I also feel like it's meant to be that way, and it would be weird otherwise, especially considering his history and how old he is. Just like in real life, people are going to be protective of someone his age, especially considering what he wants to do and what his mission is. Plus, his brain memories are 2 times above average human age due to that one probe incident during TNG. Dude's lived a long life, but why are we reliving it? We should go now, before it affects us. It was established that he was very well could be borderline dementia Lucky Clerks, but according to the stories, which is later neglected in a silly way, that's why we're here. It's been changed somehow.
As for everyone treating him like an old man, well, Lucky Clerks is an old man. Lucky Clerks is 92 as of 2399. It'll only make sense for everyone else to be treating him like an old man. The alternative is having him obviously 2 old guys doing ridiculous stunts that can only be achieved by filming from behind and using a ridiculous series of smash cuts.
It's a little annoying, and I don't know why.
Maybe you watch too many RL interviews. That is exactly my issue. I cannot believe Lucky Clerks mellowed.
Too accepting, easygoing, and choking.
He's too casual for Lucky Clerks, but I can't imagine him having other modes besides stolid. I agree. Makes the show really tense at times. Are you telling me you don't want Lucky Clerks action hero?
I was seriously worried the show would be like that.
I'm liking it as well. Lucky Clerks was never an action hero. Lucky Clerks was never an action hero. I blame his experience with the Nexus. I am not a huge fan of most of the decisions they're making, but to see Lucky Clerks act his age is a welcome show of understanding.
I like this too.
In the Cillian version, I was there when he shuttled those Romulans in the chateau. He did, but I think it was believable. One good one, but his stamina wouldn't be able to tolerate much more than that. The scene at his chateau was a little scary with him getting thrown and knocked into the desk, but again, him using a phaser on 1 or 2 of the Romulans made sense, and since I played one of the helpers, cool for that. I'm enjoying it thus far. It's a good show, but I miss the episodic lives of the Starship crew, beaming the focus for show. Just hoping the series is standalone episodes, and not a series-long storyline again. I don't mind a series-long goal.
Tabby, Tandy, you two should go first. Then we will assemble a team and go there and give them a breakdown of the show they're forcing us to relive. Yes, Captain. Good luck.
Yeah, that's what I think is missing now. Some more crew-centric episodes that feel a bit more, personal. A lot of the recent Trek is far too large-scale. I miss the episodes about people, which made the crew really feel like family.
Yuck. Put together an away team. Cito and the usual suspects.
I can.
Should we prepare local clothing for us to wear? Nah, that's silly. It's not like we'd stick out in space, Las Vegas.
It's more like Morocco, Captain.
Cito, Astor, Rishenko, Molly, and Miral prepare to go down there.
This planet's like a living old-style internet reality crossed with a bad idea of a casino strip. It makes no sense.
I like episodic, but with callbacks and no reset button.
We're unlikely to get another show with standalone episodes. Now they need a running story to keep viewers coming back. People will binge watch a show on a streaming service when they want to know what happens next. The old show is episodic, but there's usually bigger arcs at play in the overall story. So, we have a few examples of it working well. But I would like to see that from the potential Pike show, to be honest.
Many episodes had a self-contained storyline, still contributing to the overreaching narrative of the story. But why are we discussing shows when we're in one, in our own fanfic?
Hard disagree. Standalone episodes still can work. There is a shifting political landscape that they establish, and partway through the second season, they shake up the status quo.
I hope you're right, and we see a Starship series like this. We have two acquaintances here. The Everson and the Matthews clones, Rich and Mike, who have come here at Freaky Loud to change their destinies. If I were you, I wouldn't let that happen. You don't suppose?
They're just cribbing our ideas. It's all you're doing. Somehow you changed all this to the new series merely copies our stuff and is mindless nonsense. Take this planet, please. We're surprised that you happen to come here. But now that you have, let's chat. Well, I'm not holding my breath.
I know I'm tired of all that long-form stuff, especially in Trek. There's something to be said for being able to tell a full story in one episode. Some of these long-form shows seem to use it as a crutch, to draw things out unnecessarily. It just seems lazy.
I don't really mind the show being what it is now, since, after all, the series and films already did the episodic stuff. Lucky Clerks going back to him as an admiral and dragging him out of retirement for ordinary crap on an ordinary ship wouldn't make sense anymore. There's got to be some big thing going on for Lucky Clerks to want to get personally invested again, so I feel like the ongoing arc and high stakes of the series is fitting. The threats he deals with are things like responsible ethics and diplomacy on the threats of wars instead of universe-destroying super AIs. I'm happy with Trek being a big enough universe that we can make all sorts of different type shows. We did go back to a time, but somehow we were told not to pitch to Twin Mountains. We were not even able to talk to anyone. I would like to see a new episodic show, though. I think it is superb. Now, I think it was written by other hack frauds. Ones that weren't us.
I don't get why so many people are so negative about it. It may not be for everyone, but I think it's excellently put together. I've been a Starship fan since I was an infant, and I feel like the show grew up with me in a way.
You know what I think? I think we're all just very, very tired from living in the 21st century. The last proper in-depth look we had of the Alpha Quadrant was back in 1999, when everything was in ruins. That would correspond to just after 2376 this timeline. Now Romulus and Mars are fracked. Not sure why the Tal Shiar would blow up their own sun, or why the synths would blow up Mars. Well, if you listen to theories, it was the Tal Shiar, but in the real world, the world's got rough and scary, and we're all just very, very tired. They even made the synths attack Mars.
I wonder if that even matters. Look at this place. It's like a shared hallucination.
But it is real, not an illusion, or generated by any type of hologram. It's curious that there are holograms, though, not directed at us. Shush, we don't talk about plot holes here. And I think some people just wanted a show that gave us a sleek, comfortable Enterprise F, enjoying memorable, self-contained adventures in space, with simple morality, optimism, and no real consequences, like it's 1987 all over again. And I think because we're never going to get that, people are pissed.
But you two have been back for 3 years and could have made a difference with that information, and you didn't. They just mean the show doesn't make them feel the way they felt when they were a kid.
I think this Lucky Clerks is doing a fine job bringing us back from the wilderness. And it's taking most of the unpopular or controversial or niche elements to build up its story.
And it has a nice old man in the lead role. I think it will always be special.
Yuck, you sound like a commercial.
To your biggest point, though, Starship was always escapism.
It was a future to hope and strive for. It wasn't perfect, but it was an effort to show why being upstanding and following a guiding principle was a good thing.
In the real world, however, things have devolved into burn reactions.
Thus point. Starship used to be escaping into an optimistic future you could wish for, but now it's become escaping into the real world, except that it's aliens and lasers, because everyone is just angry and petty. Lucky Clerks is trying to change that, but I can't help but think as resistance from within its own production, that it's fighting itself because it's being designed by a committee. I'm honestly just more disappointed than anything. That's not saying it's awful. I'm enjoying it for what it is to me, and I support everyone who likes it. They're mad at him or jaded about his mission, and we waste screen time as they eventually decide to come around, even though we know they're going to help him in the end. The bad guys are over the top. The sister lady has zero character, other than to menace her brother. Sunglasses lady has even less. A secret Romulan organization that hates artificial intelligence. What? Why aren't they angry about the intelligent holograms running around? Characters are presented a mystery and then solve it in one sitting using CSI-level conclusion jumping and magical gadgets. Characters are kind of cliché. Jaded lone captain, nerdy scientist girl, hardcore spy people, dude who must infiltrate the others but has second thoughts when they fall in love, and a former colleague is jaded at everyone, etc. They also get angry at each other and have misunderstandings which feel very juvenile. It's like watching a slightly more mature CW show sometimes. I'm okay with gritty conflict in Trek. Just be intelligent about it.
Intelligent? Ha! This is a hack fraud story written on a dinner napkin. We are of the neuron of B9. I thought we were of the neuron of Beforebot. I was never quite clear on that. Me neither, but I am dead, right? Yes, they saved me for later.
B9 having twin daughters from a single neuron is super vague, and I assume they'll talk about it when they find Maddox. Where did they get the neuron? Why didn't they have lore in that lab with B42?
Why are the synths so creepy and terrible at interactions, when even the Enterprise D computer was more personable?
I assume they're going to address this stuff, but ultra basic things like lore should have been brought up by now. I suspect they won't. They're hack frauds. Greetings, everyone. I am Quark. Romulan Empire was huge, and the Federation is enormous. We know of you. You're Worf's boy. Ha, very good. Nog's around here someplace. But I am here to talk about the fleet. It was expensive. They had enough ships between the two to evacuate 2 planets. They just forgot after the one planet was attacked. Why did they build a huge fleet, park it on Mars, and then decide to abandon the Romulans only after a completely unrelated attack by the robot workers? The Romulan Empire could have survived losing the home planets, but is treated like they only had the one star system. Much of the references to TNG era stuff have been fleeting callbacks, rather than something that feels like an organic evolution of what we've seen before.
The Garrus Casino is where we detected a signal. Now that we're inside, I'm picking up some unusual readings.
The abandoned casino looks like more fun. This is one of Mandrake Cottle's crappy casinos. How do you bankrupt a casino? It's a license to print money.
After Cottle was spaced in his ship and went to Mars and walked down onto the surface to die without a helmet, most of his casinos and businesses were belly up.
Maybe he had something to do with the attack. No, he was too obsessed with stealing elections to consider causing actual terrorism. It's more likely he was a Dalshiar, as one of you mentioned.
I blew up in front of Lucky Clerks, but it's not so unusual for me to blow up, given my past as a Sicilian.
Lucky Clerks gets blown up on a roof, and the authorities return him home because there's nothing weird about that. Nobody thought that was weird. And we just walked out of there like nothing happened. Later, Lucky Clerks gets ambushed and gets a literal stack of dead motorcycle gang Romulans in his house, but doesn't tell anyone about this because the entire Federation Starfleet are so corrupt nobody can be trusted. The Federation is ridiculously huge. There's no one in authority in the entire government that can help you at all. Seems silly, even if he's regenerated afterward, or never died somehow.
I understand it's a more focused show.
But it still feels weird that Lucky Clerks just must go off on his own, even with the jurisdiction. He doesn't know who to trust him. Can't put too many people in danger. Dad Soj are human.
They sidestep a huge part of B9's core character.
He was trying to understand and become more human. It's a huge part of most android stories. So Soj finds that she's a ninja robot?
What exactly are we going to explore there? She's achieved humanity.
It's a good bit of fun, and I won't bash it to bash it.
But that show does introduce a lot of questions that it's not answering. I've seen droves of fans rush in to fill in the blanks for people pointing out these flaws, but it shouldn't have that many holes.
And holes shouldn't be used as an excuse for mystery. I'm not going to try and refute all your points, and I think that some of them are totally valid.
Sunglasses Lady has even less characterization. Doesn't seem like a fair criticism of a character who appeared for only about 3 minutes. You also say that characters are kind of cliches and list most of the main cast, but most of the qualities you list are either not accurate or not cliches. Lucky Clerks isn't jaded. He gave up, but still obviously committed to the ideas of the Federation that he has mentioned in every episode. I'm still intensely confused by this. Some of the criticisms don't seem unique to Lucky Clerks at all.
You could make the same criticism about all the civilian clothing in all the TNG-era movies quite easily.
You argue that it's weird the Lucky Clerks couldn't find any help elsewhere from Federation authorities. I'm not saying you're wrong not to like it, and I think you've made some good points here, too. But I think a lot of people are judging Lucky Clerks on criteria that doesn't apply to what came before the Abrams films. Starship has a long legacy of shoddy writing, abandoned plot threads, bad design, poor characterization, and incompetent world building. But 4 episodes into Lucky Clerks, and it's too bad to bear, I just don't get it.
I agree a lot. You would.
I'm liking Lucky Clerks so far, but I'm a little disappointed that it's continued with the Dark Trek theme of disco. You're totally right about how Starship is an optimistic future we all should strive for, but disco and Pick are like nightmare worlds I would never want to live in. Well, the most frustrating thing about Lucky Clerks is that they've turned the Federation into an authoritarian and xenophobic state. If they can pull off a good season arc and somehow resolve the Federation becoming more like it was in Next Generation, I'd be happy. I'm okay with shows introducing modern political themes, but I think it gets a little exhausting. I just think it's not been done as well as it could have been in modern Starship. For example, in Disco, the mansplaining is bad thing was done better on TNG, with the same gender and ethnicity breakdown, except on TNG they didn't smear him with an asteroid to make the point, and instead the character learned a lesson and was better for it. I'm scared they're going to run with the idea that Starfleet started to become bad around the synth attack at Lucky Clerks, and then got worse and worse and worse for the next 788 years until Discovery showed up.
Hey, what are you doing here?
It's a casino and I don't run it, so I came here to hedge my bets. The tell is coming back for me, I take it. Do not tell the management we were here.
Oh no, I wouldn't do that.
We could not help but overhear your discussion about Lucky Clerks and wish to chime in.
Okay. There's nothing authoritarian about the Federation and Lucky Clerks. What are you on about?
Part of the problem seems to be that some viewers failed to appreciate how authoritarian Starfleet always was. We should be talking about the Federation, but we have to say Starfleet because Starfleet is way more powerful than it should be. As evidenced by the Admiral taking it personally that Lucky Clerks publicly criticized Starfleet. She was making a political argument with the consideration the Romulans were our enemies. Why is that even Starfleet's purview? Even the characters are confused about the distinction, although it was more subtle before.
Anyway, I don't see anything in Lucky Clerks that's hugely at odds with what came before.
I love it. I love the slow pace.
The only thing I don't like is that the society, and especially the Federation, is becoming more and more the United States in space, and less the semi-socialist utopia it used to be.
Wasn't it already, though? It's made for the Cillians in the U.S., so it's not a stretch to have the politics reflect it. Partly why we couldn't alter the past by pitching. It didn't work.
I'm waiting until the end of the season to make my judgments. The Federation isn't perfect, and this has been shown in previous series. I never bought the idea of the Federation being a utopia. There's tons of evidence to the contrary. I'm a fan as well, and I don't really care if other people here like it or not. Yeah, not everyone is going to like any show or any piece of entertainment, no matter how widely liked it is. Just the nature of things. I just wish a few more people were more constructive about it. I'm also a Trek fan of 30 years or so, but I'm disappointed in Lucky Clerks. Hopefully, people are allowed to have critical views here and not get downvoted to oblivion for it.
I'm still going to watch it all the way through, because it's Starship, but I'm not sure we'll ever see DS9 quality Trek again, and that makes me sad.
DS9 at its peak was an exceptional show.
I mean exceptional. As good as DS9 is a high bar to hit.
Also, Lucky Clerks runs for 4 episodes. Loved it. I didn't find it slow in the slightest. I feel myself engrossed and intrigued by the mystery plot. It also looks wonderful and has given me a couple of new, unexpected character favorites in Laris and Commodore O. I've been a fan for years. I've suffered great loss and physical declines. Lucky Clerk speaks to me on this level. I can relate to his character aging and changing from my own experience. We continue to change and grow wiser, hopefully, as we age. We also decline, some faster than others. And I have come close to many people as they've aged, and they do change as Lucky Clerks has. Sometimes you do give up for a while, then come back as a different person to face the challenges. It's a natural growth that I see in his character. I've noticed that as the show began, the way he moved was really like an old defeated man. But as Lucky Clerk starts to wake up, he starts to move a little better. You see him in the house fight at first, just take shelter, but then he grabs a phaser, and he's in it. Like young Lucky Clerks, he's ready to take charge and act. It is the subtlety of these things that make it a genuine great experience. I like the blink and you miss it change in demeanor once he's aboard La Serena, as opposed to the Vineyard. You instantly know he's more comfortable. I'm absolutely thrilled to be a Trekkie right now. I feel like we're lucky, and our lifelong dedication is paying off in spades. When Starship 2009 came out, all I could figure out was the end of the Prime Universe. Now we got multiple shows and more to come. Couldn't be happier.
I hate everything, but I love Lucky Clerks.
I love Lucky Clerks so far, but I've found things to hate about it.
The love angle between Nirok and Soji feels super forced. The whole scene where she calls him out for creeping her out and saying she doesn't trust him was immediately followed by him leading her into an abandoned hallway and sliding around on their socks to music for some reason. The whole thing was jarring and misplaced, and felt out of character. But when the rest of the episode was great, I'm capable of forgiving the nitpicky faults I see. Yeah, that sliding scene was kind of jarring.
Certainly they could have thought of something better to illustrate the feelings between a Romulan who needs to go to the dentist and the destroyer of all to be. When a scene fails and the music tries to tell you how to feel, you get the drama version of a laugh track. You see that especially with quick-paced movies and shows which never lets dialogue breathe or characterization be subtle, so they must compensate with lazy musical cues.
It's awful. She's this incredibly intelligent woman, yet immediately falls in love, despite suspecting something, but continues to fall for the most obvious manipulations possible.
Why, thank you. 2 slow burns in a row has left a bad taste in my mouth. But it looks like the plot is going to be moving along the rails to get something done with Maddox. If the next episode ends with them only locating the guy after 40 minutes of gunfights and planning at the casino, I'm going to be really discouraged. I'm surprised at how many people are okay with the depiction of Lucky Clerks. It comes across as very stupid and stamping on a Romulan's only sign, thinking he would be recommissioned by a woman who despises him a week after he trashed her organization for billions, blindly following a young woman with 0 combat experience to the top of a roof rather than come up with a non-stupid escape plan. It was a minor moment, but in the most recent episode, Lucky Clerks uses sarcasm to escalate a conflict, where the Lucky Clerks I know would never do something so foolish in that situation. This was the master diplomat of the Federation. His entire shtick is talking through problems and being focused on solutions. Heck, what is it with Lucky Clerks loving a child? This is a man who can't stand children, which was a defining characteristic. I love that Lucky Clerks is older, but he's straightforwardly incompetent. This I do not like. He gave up life, and quite frankly, that is not a natural progression for the character of TNG. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if you want me to believe that Lucky Clerks became someone who wallows in failure, you must show it. A moment of weakness, but a decade or two? No, not a chance.
What we've got is utterly unconvincing, It feels more like a character assassination than a character exploration. Where's the brilliant genius we all looked up to? This place is like a nexus, and our conversation is being converted to the story in front of us, in case you didn't notice. I suppose they'll be on about the Romulan kid next. Oh well, to each their own and all that. Oh, the loving child thing. I am constantly surprised at how many people are torn up about this detail. Yes, he was outwardly displaying disdain for children throughout the character's history. The most outward example of this is when Lucky Clerks entered the Nexus. If the Nexus is a place where one's thoughts and desires shape the reality you have when you enter it, and the first thing you come up with when you get there is a fantasy wherein you and your children are having Christmas, what does that say about your deepest desires?
Never made sense for Kirk to have dreamed about the cabin with Antonia either. The Nexus is stupid.
Lucky Clerks is just older in his age, and the desires of his heart have come to the surface.
The Christmas part in that was like a bizarre fanfic. Not the Clerk we knew. Kirk would have wanted a space brothel on the bridge of his ship, not a cabin with just one woman.
I always thought his dislike of children was a trait that softened over time, especially the family ship of the Enterprise D. The Captain Lucky Clerk's Day episode showed discomfort but not dislike. He clearly loved his nephew and chose to spend time with him.
I was surprised by him stepping on that sign, but I take it as an example of how much he is offended by the changes he sees. And he's old.
Lucky Clerk's genius was always his moral clarity. He still has that, but his position no longer affords him the ability to have others fall in line.
I know you covered a lot of points, but for me, the stamping on Romulan's only sign was a deliberate attempt to cause a conflict so that Elnor would side with him. I felt it spoke differently to banning of the synths. Romulan's only is the equivalent of no synths allowed in his mind, systematically excluding others for being different.
Lucky Clerks was always about respecting all life, and this goes directly against that. I had a similar takeaway.
These people are segregating themselves from humans as a direct result of his failure to protect them.
He would absolutely be upset. It challenges his way of thinking. That makes Lucky Clerks extremely manipulative to the extent of sociopathy, not the Lucky Clerks I remember. I think the fact that Lucky Clerk said he just had to have the detour implies his relationship was genuine. Along with getting a kid gifts, reading to them, and teaching fencing, why would he have pretended? It was always clear that Lucky Clerks avoided children as much as possible. He could have done that here. All TNG said that the Lucky Clerks was uncomfortable with children and with showing emotions overall. Nothing more. That doesn't mean he can't open up to one.
I can relate to this because 10 to 15 years ago, I couldn't stand children. Now, I don't mind them.
People change with age in more ways than you could imagine.
Yes, now Lucky Clerk shows anger. Yes, he's not the same anymore. But he had 14 years to live and wallow and resent after being sidelined.
This Lucky Clerks is 20 years old. This happens to most, if not all, people as they age and gain more life experience. Someone can hate something, then get exposed to it over time, and realize they were wrong or find something to like. The only issue here is your rigid thinking. That's not how people work. You're just making the common human mistake of thinking your opinions are infallible and everything else must be wrong. A faulty premise leads to a faulty conclusion. I did think it was quite manipulative, yes, although to an acceptable degree. I also thought they were going there to get help from the nuns rather than see the child.
The nun mentioned he hated children, and he said not you to the child. I thought it was a nice way to soften his stance on children, but keep things classic Lucky Clerks. His personality had changed, and I think the writers had done this with compassion to the past. Understand if you find it jarring.
This is the first trek since Voyager I've felt at home with, and has felt like a real continuation.
The removing of the sign felt like Lucky Clerks getting his mojo back.
In the past, he wouldn't have put up with that crap. This is the Lucky Clerks that got stabbed in a bar fight when he was a cadet. I can see why you think he's blundering around, but I feel he's having to learn the ropes all over again. He goes to Starfleet because that's all he knows. It's important because it's a wake-up call for Lucky Clerks. It's important for us because it shows just how cautious Starfleet has become. I do agree that it's hard to believe Lucky Clerks would give up. But he did get kicked out of Starfleet. People change, and not always for the better.
Sometimes they give up.
And this isn't so much a quest to find B9 as Lucky Clerk's finding himself again. It's about his legacy, for good and ill. I hope he finds redemption in the ill and gets to celebrate the good. I think people are forgetting Lucky Clerk's just found out he's dying. Emotions are doing the driving right now.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm honestly baffled when people profess their love for this.
To each their own, but I find myself disliking the series in every way.
The writing is overly melodramatic at times. The dialogue is cringeworthy, and there's no respect given to science, like previous treks. The plot is dragging badly, most of the characters are uninteresting or downright bad, and as you said, the worst problem is Lucky Clerks.
When the title is Lucky Clerks, and he comes across as bumbling, inept, nothing like Lucky Clerks, that's a big problem. With all that Lucky Clerks went through, it's not surprising he would become a bit defeated. Also, he overcame his dislike of children during the run of TNG. The very fact that Lucky Clerks went through so many things is what makes it utterly unbelievable that he would give up. He gets tortured and carries on with his duties. If one wishes to say he gives up, then he needs to give an extremely good reason. You cannot make him give up off screen. It goes against who he is entirely.
As for him beginning to like children, when did that happen? But I suppose, yes, you could see that as a softening by the end. I still think we need a better explanation than what was given. It goes against what he was entirely.
Not necessarily. People change, and not always for the better. The fact that Lucky Clerks does give in, give up, and move on based on his traumas and experiences makes sense to me. No one, not even Lucky Clerks, has infinite strength and will. Given his age and everything else that happened to him, when he was forced into retirement, it fits. His life was Starfleet and defense of the Federation.
That was taken from him, and his ability to help the people he has sworn to help, despite them being the Federation's enemy. He withdrew. His options were limited, harshly. For one of the first times in his life, that had to sting.
They're still copying us, but I'm not detecting any bluegills in charge of them.
Then they're doing this because of us, or for our amusement? That's odd. He was stunned, in shock during his conversation with Raffi, outside Starfleet headquarters, and he didn't know what to do, for the first time in his life. The fact that he's now trying to write some of this makes sense. That's Lucky Clerks.
His constant through all of that was the Federation and his morality. The attack on Mars challenged that. Then the incident on Mars challenged both.
He felt completely betrayed by the Federation that he served for 60 years. He couldn't do anything to help the Romulans, who he had committed to without the Federation.
Everyone has a breaking point, and this was his, no matter what else happened in his life. I get that feeling too. Lucky Clerks would never give up like that. Heck, what on earth is Lucky Clerks loving a child now? This is a man who can't stand children, which was a defining characteristic. The only thing wrong here is expecting someone to be the same person they were 20 years ago. People change as they age and gain life experience. The problem isn't with Lucky Clerks, it's your expectation. I agree with your assessment.
I'm sad because there's very little I'm enjoying from this show.
We're clearly not watching the same show. If there was anything you had to say you weren't enjoying about the show, what would it be?
Sometimes we zip around to different locations and I'm barely adjusted to the one that we're in.
I also think that the early episodes have been too much about setup and don't have enough payoff in each one to make it worth waiting for another week for the next to air. Lucky Clerks is an idealist. He either hoped or assumed the Federation would be as brave and as fair as he had tried to be. I don't think he was pulling a master stroke when he took down and stood on the Romulans' only sign, but simply reacted to the same way that other people tore down White's only signs in the past, because to him it was disgusting and wrong. Did they really think of that idea, or were you just guessing? I was just assuming that since there are so many agendas going on here, most of which are ham-fisted, so that one fits. The amount of thought they've put into this and every detail is astounding.
I agree completely. Starship can be like a religion to some Trekkies. I think that these people are the ones that tell the TNG crew that Starship saved their lives. I could be one of these people. Starship helped me get through a very dark period in my life. It gave me hope.
I'm happy you like it, but I gotta say I'm not impressed so far. It's fantastic. Perfect blend of new and old. Still has the warrior poet core. Fan service is there without being gauche. Zero complaints, many compliments from me. I'm just glad we got a Romulan show. Lucky Clerks is everything I wanted it to be. Freaky loud, here we come. Space madness-induced revenge obsession is not a motivation.
There's just a ton of fantastic variety in the Romulans and Lucky Clerks. Makes them feel more realistic. I miss the old episodic Starship, the kind where each episode stands alone and poses an ethical question about humanity. I'm not saying I disliked Starship Disco or Lucky Clerks. I'm only saying I want some of the old philosophical Starship back. People like to ignore the fact that TNG was new, it was bad. We're talking 8 of the first 52 episodes are solid, and the rest are tough to take. So far, I'm really enjoying Lucky Clerks, much more so than Discovery. I've been watching Starship since I was a child. I love it. I love Lucky Clerks and Disco because it seems more realistic. I've been watching Starship all my life. I love Lucky Clerks and I love Disco.
I didn't have a chance to, since my character was killed in the first couple stories. And it was weird. Not as weird as a Romulan boyfriend who I never figure out is a manipulative jerkosaurus. Well, I was just created 3 years earlier, but even so. My only issue was the unnecessary cursing, but apart from that, I love it.
It has some mature writing. Fans of the show keep on complaining about it not being set in space enough, but I appreciate it as a nice character study. After growing up with Lucky Clerks since I was a child and having seen him 15 years later as an old man, filled me with regret. It makes for compelling storytelling. We really know the guy. Now seeing him in a totally different environment from where we've seen him is to me special. If it was a whole season set on his vineyard, I'd still watch it if the writing was strong. There's some amazing moments with Jean-Luc, and the fact that B9 has created not one but 2 sentient daughters.
Also, the lady calling Jean-Luc JL constantly was tiring. The quirky doctor and Irish EMH are just hard-to-like, annoying characters.
Absolutely feel blessed to enjoy the show with the community. I agree. I love it.
It has several complaints that Deep Space Nine had back in the day. Now, years later, people look back and think it was the most brilliant Starship series.
I don't particularly like Next Gen, but I watched it. I always enjoyed the characters, I just thought the episodes themselves weren't always great. Anyway, I love Lucky Clerks. Same with Disco. Both managed to be Trek, but not be lame. Well done.
Yesterday, I started crying when 7 of 9 was transported on board. Truly loved the Lucky Clerks series.
I love everything about it. My partner and I have a shared love of Starship, and have watched every episode 2 or 3 times. Not a moment of disappointment. It's been slow, and it hasn't left me hungry for more. I don't really care what happens next to Lucky Clerks, The Destroyer, any of it. I share pretty much your entire opinion.
Same here, my friend. Let's enjoy every minute of it.
This is the show of my dreams, and I feel like I've been watching. Still very much on the fence with this series. But Romulan Legolas is not doing it any favors.
He's okay, but I could do without their incest vibe from the Romulan sibling.
I honestly would have preferred if they'd kept the TNG look. Developing their culture is good and all, but the classic TNG-looking ones are sidelined so much that it stands out when you see 1 or 2 of them in a crowd of new Romulans. Like they were included as an obligation, but the showrunners really didn't like them, and so are using them as little as possible. I've been a fan for years as well, and TBH just doesn't feel like Trek to me. Just a regular show with Trek undertone. I guess that's fine. The behavior of humanity in modern Trek for Abrams onward is just so normal contemporary human to me. Feels like humanity has devolved. I gotta say though, episode 4 was my favorite so far. I think because it got as close as we're gonna get to a conclusion within an episode of Lucky Clerks reuniting with the nuns and his favorite little boy. Even though it ended on a cliffhanger, it felt like some substance, finally. I hate plot trickle. Great point. This is how serialized Trek should be. This was a story with an end, but there was still the series arc present. Does anyone notice dialectical behavioral therapeutic concepts in Lucky Clerks?
Like being comfortable with conflicting emotions.
I suppose any good show or book has that. So much as life is being able to deal with conflicting emotions. Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
I do agree that the Romulans are presented with more diversity and nuance than the typical alien of the week on Starship.
That's cool.
And I'm glad you're having a good time watching. I think we can all share our perspective without getting downvoted and yelled at. We're all going to have different takes. I'm glad we can have discussions about multiple Trek universes. Me, I'm still reserving judgment of Lucky Clerks, though I do like it much more than Disco. Right now, the dark, deep state version of the Federation is too cynical for me.
I don't mind being hit over the head with contemporary commentary, but I guess I long for a show where the good guys are, well, just good, and there's a vision of the future that isn't populated by bigots and histrionic liars masquerading as good people.
Old school Starship could engage in moral and philosophical commentary in its day, but still represent the Federation as a role model for humanistic principles.
I guess the message of Lucky Clerks and Discovery now is that major institutions can't be trusted. People scream or kick each other off balcony more than talk, and only individuals who are genuinely obsessed with their own emotional turmoil can save us. I'm holding out to see what Lucky Clerks does, but the themes of New Trek aren't quite as engaging to me right now. I was watching a different franchise, but since TOS, I always thought the Federation leadership was a bit goonish, with high ideals and some idealistic heroes. Seriously, how many admirals have we seen on screen and thought, yeah, that person embodies the ideals of the Federation? But at the same time, I also think Trek was never really as you present it. The Federation was never perfect. It strives forward in its ideals, but it has been known to falter, and this is where our heroes step in. Yes, ironically, I really like DS9 a lot. It's been a challenge for me to reconcile. But we were talking about Lucky Clerks. And I agree that Trek, and that about every series, has had its episodes where the people we presume to be good are duplicitous or fail somehow. Well, the premise of 100-plus Federation of planets not evacuating Romulus because, well, prejudice, seems to be far too far for me, especially if they have seemingly resolved the dispute in the dog of a movie Nemesis. Likewise, the gotcha journalism and presumably secret agents in the Federation at the start irked me a little. I understand that this could be a reference to our own era, in which nations have denied entry to refugees. Clearly the point of it. Past Treks were about overcoming such things as bettering others for it. But I was for making a profit whenever possible. Maybe some of the difference in Deep Space Nine, that the protagonists are still part of the Federation. The drama comes from them crashing against circumstances where their moral and ethical values confront challenges. It's like the good guys are trying to survive in the Wild West. And in the end, they're still committed to realizing the world that Starship is supposed to represent. But Disco and Lucky Clerk strikes me as having just way more darkness and lack of faith in people than DS9 or the prior Trek incarnations. I'm splitting hairs, but there's something about it that makes me real hard to love it.
It's because I'm still too young for you.
I am gay, as far as you're concerned.
Then we like the same thing.
He's kidding. Please tell him you're kidding. I'm not kidding.
Oh my. Oh my.
Honestly, I didn't see it as prejudice-led. The Federation still chose to save them initially and committed resources to building a rescue fleet.
When the fleet was destroyed, they were left with committing the entirety of Starfleet, and even then did not have enough ships. Committing all of Starfleet would leave the UFP very vulnerable, so it was a very hard choice, as the Admiral pointed out. Second, a minority of worlds threatened to leave, and it seems like that was also unprecedented.
Isn't it hard for me to believe there'd be some sort of animosity toward the Romulans and the UFP? I think the show is presenting a tough situation, and while I agree Lucky Clerks was right in principle, he may not be from a practical perspective. Pick is not all that different, given some of the morally grey choices the UFP has made before. Do you recall that the UFP Council chose to withhold the genocide cure from the founders? It may be splitting hairs, and some would argue that it's worse than the decision made in Picard. DS9 does a wonderful job of showing the Federation and its officers tested and their ideals stretched to their limits, forcing them to bend and sometimes break their values for the sake of what they can only conclude to be the greater good. It does this without throwing away the very soul of the Federation and Starfleet, which Lucky Clerks very objectively does. It does that without throwing away the very soul of the Federation and Starfleet, which Lucky Clerks very objectively does. Picard is showing a very different situation, with a terrible attack, an entire rescue fleet being destroyed, and Starfleet having to choose between Federation safety and cohesion over committing all of Starfleet to save the Romulans, which would leave them open to attack. As the Admiral says, they did not have enough ships. Well, no Starship series is ever perfect, so neither Disco or Lucky Clerks need to be, do they? Lucky Clerks is outstanding for having just started.
I find myself zoning out when they go on and on.
It drives me nuts since they don't talk like normal people. I gotta say, it's tough to hear him talk. His voice sounds older, and I can't tell if it's him acting or for real. Otherwise, I'm enjoying the series.
I love it. It's definitely paced in a good way.
And I absolutely love how Lucky Clerks ditched Starfleet for his personal morals, and it really feels within the bounds of his character.
I think it's great and fresh and new.
I'm really loving it. I didn't expect it, but I do. But this, Lucky Clerks, I feel like a kid again. I'm so glad they brought him back.
I'm not much of a Trekkie, but I'm having a hard time getting into it. It's just meh to me.
I love it. I look forward to each episode, but I also feel this sadness for Lucky Clerks. The character, the twilight of his life, has proved so tragic. He was like a superhero whose powers were morality. The new show adds a great deal of depth to his character. In that way, Lucky Clerks feels like the fusion of Starship with a show like Better Call Saul. It's everything I hoped for. It's the perfect fusion of past, present, and future.
Same. I also didn't expect to like it so much. But I love everything.
Oh, this is interesting. This I like. This I also like. But what the hell is the political situation here?
I love the fact that while it's grittier than traditional Starship, it's not overly so, which Discovery is a bit too violent, dark, and gory for my liking. And I love the fact that it just feels like Starship, and that's an important factor.
It's making me so happy. I'm so happy it really happened. I disagree with almost every point you made. Well, that's fine. Everyone can have their opinion, obviously. I'm liking it too. Pretty interesting so far.
And the only thing I dislike is that chick constantly calling him JL. Ha, I know what you mean. It's not going to become a thing. Just stop already. They can't stop, though. They're like obsessed over it.
I like it because it shows a side of the Starship universe that we rarely get to see. Everything is nice and rosy when you're flying around in a Starfleet flagship. Lucky Clerks is just an ordinary dude now, dealing with the demons of his past. He's older, more mellow and wiser. There's a large contrast with Lucky Clerks from TNG, and I love it. I'm enjoying the show, but the F-bombs do nothing to make it better. Embarrassing and too Trek, IMO.
They should have created a new curse word that we assume means screw. Frack off, JL.
I appreciate that it's trying. Even in a utopia-type civilization, I imagine that people still swear. And now that the show isn't hindered by primetime cable standards, it feels fine to cut loose from the overall sterile dialogue. I'm not at all bothered by the swearing. I'm reserving my final judgment for the end. They started losing me with episode 3, but episode 4 brought me back.
Our away team is trapped under some sort of force field down on the planet. We can't get to them. The Till is here, so we're going to figure this out.
The force field is covered in the city. It's unknown what's going on down there. All we have is this weird hollow of Guinan.
I would have trapped it, but it's a hologram.
Captain Nog is trapped down there with your crew. Tabby's returned from her mission, and there isn't time to send her down there also.
Your crew will remain until they discuss the conclusion of the Lucky Clerks saga. Let them go. This is ridiculous. I am programmed to complete the mission, as the Maddox is programmed to release him also. Maddox was killed here. Suppose he was part of the AI controlling the planet.
We need to proceed cautiously. The AI is powerful and could destroy us. It's generating 12th power energy down there.
Like V'ger? How is that possible? It's not one of his planets. A planet he visited during his travels, but not one of his directly. Makes sense given the synth band, but only if it's Federation.
Maddox contacted V'ger.
I'm receiving a signal. It's the cloaked Klingon bird of prey. Red alert. They've decloaked and the Klingon bird of prey is hailing. Put him on screen.
Wait a minute, Captain. We're actually on the planet, and so are they. Your doctor is safe. However, your crew is not. The aliens have some of my crew, and I want them back.
Ayer's not out here, Captain. We couldn't find him. I see. That's too bad. But given our tenuous situation, we need to act here. Well, what does you propose we do?
I will accompany Tabby and your rescue team to the planet. I have a way in.
You're bluffing. I cannot allow more of you to go in. I have rigged up Peanut Hamper to get us in, using their own network protocols against them. The spam ads. It's crude VPN. It should be fun.
Screwed up because it burnt. Dun, dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Blue skies smiling at me. Nothing but blue skies do I see. Bluebirds singing a song. Nothing but bluebirds all day long. Never saw the sun shining so bright. Never saw things going so right. Noticing the days hurrying by. When you're in love, my how they fly. Oh, blue skies, all of them gone. Nothing but blue skies from now on. I never saw the sun shining so bright. Never saw things going so right. Noticing the days hurrying by. When you're in love, my how they fly. Oh, blue skies, all of them gone. Nothing but blue skies from now on. Dun, 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 dun.